somebody from the land down under with us today. I'll introduce Darren Marshall. Darren is from Queensland now. His resume of working with of animals like the feral pig and other feral species and problem species in Australia is quite impressive, but I'm not going to go over all that. He is working on his PhD at the University of New England.
Yep.
Yeah, which is a major university in Australia. I've served on committees there. And he heads up right now the Queensland-Murray-Darling is a river system committee, and he's the regional coordinator for weeds and feral animals, and that's in Toowoomba.
Toowoomba.
Toowoomba? Queensland. In Australia 4 times, and I still can't pronounce it. Anyway. So he'll go through this, but the Australians are way ahead of us in some of these feral hog control, some of these other invasive species control methods. And of course, they've had a lot of invasive species, right? Because all kinds of things were brought over to Australia and then let go. Anyway, no further ado.
Thank you.
No.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's make this interactive. I want to go through our experiences in Australia. I'm certainly not here to tell you how to manage feral pigs. It'd be great if we could, but it'd be really good just to share information, share details, and just have a chat about the problem in general, but I'll go through it from an Australian context, so please ask me any questions that you want as we go. Basically, we've got 4 main predators in the landscape. They're all placental mammals. In Australia, we only have marsupials. There are no placental mammals. The only feral that's not up there are the people. So they're the 4 that we deal with the most. There's a debate about the dingo, whether or not he's native or not. He's not if you go far enough back. Obviously the pig, the fox, and the cat. So we're going to focus on the pigs today. Basically, the distribution it's unknown when they first come in. Some people call them captain cookers. So 1788, the first fleet arrived. The first boat apparently had 8 pigs on it. Whether or not they ate all of those or released a few, but as the first fleet kept coming, they definitely brought pigs, and they definitely released some, so they'd be there for when they come back. So that's up here, and then down at Sydney. So I'm not sure how clear that is up there, but the distribution is basically around here and in the wetter parts. As you get into the outback, as most people will know in this room, water is probably the biggest limiting factor for pigs. So as you hit the outback, they pull up. But they're still spreading south, and they're still spreading across the Kimberley and around Western Australia. That's the main patch that I work at the moment. So a little bit on the ecology. I'm going to do this pretty quick because you guys are going to know a lot of this information. Everyone in here is familiar with feral pigs, yeah? Everyone's right across it. So I think the biggest difference, I don't need to go through all that, you know it. The biggest difference between your pigs and our pigs is I think you've got a lot more of the Eurasian influence in them because you keep bringing them for hunting, I guess, whereas Australia didn't really do that. Ours are more domesticated pigs gone wild. So there is a Eurasian influence for sure, but I don't think it's anywhere near as much as what you may have here. Obviously, the breeding cycle is what makes them so prolific, I guess. The largest breeding, fastest breeding mammal at the moment on Earth. So, you know, they have just as much impact in Australia as they do here. And I've never aged a pig over 4, in my experience. So, you know, the big old crusty boar with the torn ears, and he looks like he's 100 years old, he's 4. So that really does amaze me. I think in Australia, water, food and shelter obviously drives their abundance and their distribution, but I think water, because we're so dry, is the biggest benefit that we have to try to target them. The problem I have, and we'll talk about this more as we go through this, is motivating people to act on controlling the feral pigs at the correct time. I've worked from a research point of view on feral pigs for 12 years. And, and I was getting pretty frustrated because it was really good to find out all this fantastic ecology, detail, how we can target them, better control methods. At the end of the day, research is here, but motivating the people is just as important for us, just as important. It's not more important or less as important, but it's equal. And we have to spend more time focusing on that. We have to get that right, because I believe that we can control pigs and we can get rid of pigs if we get people to work together. I'm not going to go through those details, you know that. I'm just going to quickly now go through the damage to agriculture, the damage to biodiversity and the disease stuff, because it's probably a little bit different to here and Australia. Agricultural impact, our biggest one by far is the crops. Chickpeas, wheat, sorghum, things like that. You guys probably have chickpeas, you know, at planting time. That's what they do, straight the night after planting. That's not a machine that's done that, that's pigs. And then lambs are tricky. Wild dogs or dingoes definitely do have an impact on sheep and on lambs. There's no doubt about that. I'm not saying that. But I think pigs are really underestimated. Basically because if a dog takes a lamb, he'll kill it, and then he might go and chase the next one and kill it and kill it and kill it and kill it, and then maybe eat a couple. Where a pig will eat the whole lamb. So I think a lot of the time the landholders don't really have a good handle on the impact that pigs are having on their lambs. They may blame other things, or they just don't see them, so they don't know that they're there because they're eaten entirely. And then obviously the infrastructure and water quality issues. We did a study on sorghum. I'm sorry this is not going to be in acres, and I'm not quick enough on the spot to change it. Basically, we did sorghum, 23 paddocks, over 5,270 acres. We walked transects through all of that to estimate the pig damage. Basically, this was in a season where the pigs were pretty low density. So we only got 5% damage, up to 5% damage. There's cases where they'll take out the whole field, of course. But even at the 5% damage, if you average it at $19 a hectare loss to feral pigs, then it's still across Queensland, it comes up to about $10 million. So that's really powerful for us to take back to the landholders and the community to show them that, because then when you give that, you just stop for a minute and you watch everyone go, I've got this many acres, oh gee, I should control. So, you know, that's one of the tools, I guess, that you guys would use and we use. That's tricky. Sorry, I mustn't be doing it. We'll go to agricultural impacts. Aren't going to be too much different from what you guys experience, I don't think. I think it's just important for us as scientists or extension officers to capture that in extension or outreach material that actually engage the community. That's the challenge, how to get the hooks into them. I call them hooks, like fishing. I need to hook those landholders on any different way I can to motivate them to participate. So another hook, one's the agricultural impact. That's the biggest one with landholders for sure. But the other one is the biodiversity impact. It's tough as you come west in Australia, because there's so much crop and there's so much pasture, it's really hard to find that iconic biodiversity symbol that's being affected by pigs to motivate those types of people to want to control pigs. I don't know how many stomachs I've been through now looking for this mighty species. I'm nearly to the point where I'm thinking about putting one in there. But all we're getting is basically vegetable matter, whether it's crop or pasture. But there's a few frogs and snakes, but you don't have to go far. If you go up to the barrier reef, we all know how opportunistic pigs are, and if they find a food source, they will exploit it until it's gone. I think we need to be smart about that. That's a weakness for them. We need to use that, and we'll come back to that. But you can see the turtles here, so they have a massive impact on the turtles as those eggs all come out, all hatch and make their way down the beach. There's pigs waiting for them on the beach. So there is significant biodiversity impacts in certain areas, but not universal. Disease spread. We don't have all of the diseases yet that you guys have. I said yet. Our two big ones are leptospirosis and brucellosis, but the population is quite infected. You know, there's a pretty high percentage of that infection, and I know people that have contracted both of those off feral pigs from field dressing and things like that. So you know, half of them in sort of a part of northern New South Wales and southern Queensland, where about half the pigs have lepto and a small percentage have brucellosis. So that's really important to engage and hook again. We're hooking the community again on all of those agricultural producers that just have cattle. So often we'll have blokes that have cropping and they'll be really keen to control the pigs. But then the cattle fellas, they don't really impact on us. And the kids like to come home and shoot them. We'll leave them. Well, when they find out that the lepto has got into their cattle herd and half of their calves are being aborted because of the lepto, then all of a sudden it's an issue. So again, we need to engage, outreach and get to those people to entice them to participate. So in the perfect world, we'd have broad-scale control programs. It's a waste of time doing this stuff on isolated properties unless we work on 100,000 acre basic area. That's 10 or 12 landholders. If we can get them to work together, we can have an impact, an actual significant impact on the pig population there, and then we have to work on the reinfestation as they come back in. Obviously, the more densely populated it is with people, the harder that is, because you still need as much area, but you've got more people to deal with. So that's tough. And I think we need to incorporate in that size good research and good motivational, engaging research that includes the community so that they want to be involved and they want to participate and then they're motivated. Gone are my days of doing some research, publishing it, going back to the people and showing them that doesn't work for me. It hasn't worked. I want to try to motivate them and have them involved from the start rather than just show the results. The barriers, there they are, these buggers. Why doesn't feral pig control work? We've touched on control over a large enough area to have an impact on the abundance and the reinfestation rates. Implementing control as one community. So you've got a chickpea farmer, a sheep farmer, a cotton farmer and a sorghum farmer. The sheep farmer wants to control the pigs just before lambing, let's say September. The chickpea farmer wants to control just before planting, April. The sorghum farmer and the wheat farmer want to control the pigs just before the milky stage and it all turns, which is probably November, something like that, September to November. So those times don't line up. So do you think that they can look past their own enterprise and work as a community? There's my challenge. How do I get them to do that? How can I do that without using force? I did join the army when I first left school, but I can't use any of those methods. So, you know, that's what we need to do, is to get them motivated. I think the challenge is, and something that a lot of people in Australia do, is they focus on the enterprise, even the researchers, and they talk about controlling the impact, not controlling the population. Let's not worry about the population, let's just worry about impact and control on impact. I'm far enough from Australia to be a little bit cheeky. I think that's wrong. If we control based on enterprise and based on the impact, we're not working as a community. If we control based on the feral pig's ecology and when the pig's at its weakest, well then we can stop focusing on those different times a year and focus on the pig's weak spot. And then we can work as a community. That's just my opinion though. And then implementing control programs properly. I'm sure there's a perception, I know there's a perception in the States, if we had the toxins, if we could use toxicants, we would go a long way to fixing this problem. And it's a great tool in the toolbox, don't get me wrong, I'm not taking away from it, but it still relies on people doing it properly. And so we'll go through that very shortly and share some experiences of how to do that correctly. So the human dimensions, I believe the stakeholders must own the problem.
I was just going to ask.
Sorry.
When are you say focus on when the pigs are at their weakest. When is that?
I think in Australia it's in the middle of winter, so ironically August, because it's cold, they're hungry, they're looking for a food source. I think their biggest problem is they can't help but eat. So, you know, they want to get that protein, they want to get the protein requirement so they get to a breeding level. So when it's cold and they're hungry, we can really target them on control methods that use food sources. And then I also think another good time is January, when it's stinking hot, based on water sources. And we'll look at some of that in a minute. So food and water. Yeah. So the management's not just a technical problem. As we said, we've got to get the people to participate. We can talk about conflicts and people working together. That's a barrier, and lack of knowledge about the actual issue and when to target them. We've touched on that as well. This is a really good example. This is a study that CSIRO did in Australia. Please don't ask me what that stands for. I should know. They're the lead federal research organisation in Australia. This is work we did with them on feral pigs and their abundance in the Queensland-Murray-Darling basin where I work. So that's the border, that's New South Wales down here, and that's the start of Queensland going that way. So what we've got here is the densities of feral pigs at different times. So what that is that's a dry summer, that's a wet summer, that's a dry winter, and that's a wet winter. So you can see when it's cool and there's moisture, the pigs can move. It's not rocket science, is it? When it's hot and dry, they're really confined to the rivers. So when do I get all of the phone calls from the people having pig problems about when to control pigs? It's here. Darren, your pigs are back, and your pigs are causing me problem again. Can you come and kill your pigs for me? And it's here. How can I motivate them to do it here? Because wouldn't we have a massive impact if we could hit them while they were down? It would just be so much stronger. Again, we're back to talking about motivating people and getting communities to work together. At that time, not that time. The control techniques. We'll just quickly go through these and speak about each one. We're lucky that we can use toxicants from the ground and the air. Aerial shooting, trapping, ground shooting, hunting and exclusion fencing. In my opinion, they're in order of effectiveness. And so we'll go through those quickly from an Australian point of view. Toxicants, absolutely fantastic for moving a bulk amount of pigs cheaply and efficiently. You can do it from the ground and the air. In Australia, there are 3 toxicants that are still legal to use. And basically that's 1080, which you guys developed, and we can use, but you can't. Thank you. It is a really good method for us because it basically comes from sodium fluoroacetate. It's developed from trees that naturally exist in Australia. So the reason that it's so powerful for us is all of our native fauna has evolved with it. So all of our marsupials are basically immune to 1080. The only thing that 1080 will destroy is placental mammals. So dogs, foxes, pigs and cats. So how good's that? Our natives are immune and our ferals aren't. We should have the problem fixed, eh? So we'll talk about that. And sodium nitrite, basically that's work that's happening at the moment in conjunction with Animal Control Technologies Australia, as well as the Invasive Animal CRC in Australia, and then also in partnership with you guys over here. And we spoke about the Kerrville the Kerr Research Station, and Justin Foster and those guys out there. I've just come from there, and they're basically replicating studies so that you guys can hopefully find a toxicant that'll work in the States. And we're trying to find one to work in Australia, because 1080 is perceived to be a nasty toxin. Because if you've ever seen anything die from 1080, it's not pretty. So we're not replacing 1080 because of its effectiveness or because it's brilliant at targeting the animals we want to target. We're replacing it because it's perceived to be not a humane death. Whereas sodium nitrite is. And aerial meat baiting, we'll talk about that. So the advantages of the toxicants, widely accepted, they're fast and it's effective and it's cheap. The big disadvantage is working dogs. I said it targets all placental mammals. Pigs need 72 milligrams per kilogram. A dog needs 5. So if I've been out baiting feral pigs all day and I've even got a little bit of liquid on my boot and the dog licks my boot, it's all over for the dog. I think another really good analogy is when you put grain out and you've got 1080 out in that grain for pig control. A fox needs to eat about 4 grains of wheat. So you'll always see dead foxes around which is fantastic anyway, but when you have landholders with big expanses of country that really do rely on working dogs to muster cattle, sheep, they are very, very reluctant to bait, because their working dogs are worth a fortune to them. And again, it must be implemented correctly. So here's an example. This landholder had no pigs. No pigs on my place, Darren. Hasn't been a pig here for 10 years. Can I please just put a remote camera out and we'll have a look? We'll just see what's there. And we'll just check it out, and I'll just put a line of grain out and we'll see. So this is really effective for me to show how you need to do that baiting. If you just tip a pile of grain out in a bucket in a circle, this is what happens. Everyone's eating happily, a big dominant pig will come in, and then they'll all stand off. So he'll kill himself 3 or 4 times over. He's gone, no doubt about it. But all of these guys, they're only getting a sublethal dose, then they learn what 1080 tastes like, and we all know pigs are as smart as dogs, they're not coming back. So what you're doing is creating a mob of pigs that is resistant, I guess, because they know not to eat it. So it's really important to put bait out in lines. The grain needs to go out in lines so everybody can get some. And what's even more important is to free feed. So get them used to it. Don't poison it. Don't poison it at all to start with. Just put it out in lines, and every night you need to double the amount of grain. We get to the point where we're putting 200 or 300 kilos of grain out per night, because most landholders, this guy didn't even think he had pigs. If he put 1 bucket of grain out, he would have killed a couple of pigs, but the rest of the pigs wouldn't be there. But if you keep putting it out in lines and doubling it each night till there's none left, you know everyone's getting a feed. So therefore, you're having a massive impact on that population. We've found that you need to free feed for 7 to 10 nights before your sort of numbers will plateau out. Ideally, you'd have a camera up and you'd watch the density, you'd watch it rise. When it plateaus, then you can put your toxins out. So just an example of that, if you just look at the dark blue line, the other ones are just independent water point lines. This is the number of nights, this is the number of pigs visiting 12 different bait stations. After 3 or 4 nights, we've got 50 to 80 pigs free feeding. So, righto, let's go. We've got 80. Let's poison them. Into it. Well, if you leave it, in this case was probably more 10 or 12 nights, same amount of bait stations, just keep the grain up, we got to 180 pigs. So if you bait at this point, you're only really knocking the cream off the top. You're not having any impact on the population. But here you can see over 2 nights, you drop your population by that 70%, which you need to do, and you're back to here. So you've had a significant impact on that population. But it's really hard to motivate landholders to keep feeding for that long, especially when they've already got 80. Let's take those 80, then we'll go again. You know, that's difficult. Hog hoppers, we use these feeders just to make it a little bit more target specific, especially for cattle and things like that. Your bears will tear these things to shreds, I would imagine. But we use them, we've done trials with those. They're based on a design where that door slides up and down. It's pretty simple. It's not rocket science. Not many things in Australia you get under and lift. They all come over the top. So the pigs, you leave it open like that, and the pigs soon learn to lift it. Then you close it right up, and then the pigs will come in, and you can see it works. Same thing, 120 pigs. That line's relatively stable. Put the toxin out and drop it by your 70%. Have to always remember you can't only use one control method, because not all pigs are going to take that one control. There's always that 20 to 30% of the population that are too smart. They'll work it out. So you've got to hit them another way. The sodium nitrite, we touched on this. This is actually at the Cur. And just the partnership that we work on with those guys. They're doing fantastic work out there. I'm sure you all know that, especially what they've built that facility from. And just the research that's going on out there. Fingers crossed they will crack a toxicant that the pigs will accept. Sodium nitrite is salt. So it's really hard to hide, to conceal. So it's being microencapsulated. But then, of course, it's got to all break down at the same time in the stomach or the intestine to get the lethal dose. So you can imagine all the problems with that. And sodium nitrite reacts with water really quickly. So any moisture in the landscape that will react with that, then the pig's going to taste the salt straight away. So there are a lot of issues, but those guys and the Australians are working hard on fixing that to get nitrite registered. The last one we tried was a peanut paste. Basically an oil base rather than water base, and that works pretty well, but there's all different things being trialled. Aerial shooting, advantages, fantastic fun. You can get to most areas, there's a real rapid knockdown, it can be used over large areas, and the cost is reasonable. Cost is really tricky. It really worries me when a landholder says, we put the chopper up and it cost us 50 cents a pig. How good's that? That's terrible. You need to be putting the chopper up and it's costing you $5 a pig. Because if you've got to look that hard to find the pigs, it means you're getting somewhere. If it costs you 50 cents a pig, put the chopper back up. There's still a lot out there. So you don't want to evaluate the effectiveness of your aerial shoot by how much it costs. Never. and we all do that. It's instinct. But the more it costs, the less pigs there are. It can disperse pigs. They do get smart to helicopter sounds. Obviously the cost increases as the density increases, but we want that. Density decreases, sorry. I guess in Australia as well, we're lucky where we do have wide open spaces. Obviously aerial shooting is not going to work in some of the country that I've driven through here today. To get here, it's too thick. You know, you'd be a crack shot if you could get pigs in some of that. So we're lucky that we do have the open spaces to work with there. Trapping. We could talk all day about trapping, and I think you guys could teach us a fair bit about trapping, because I guess that's your main technique. But just really quickly, we don't need to touch on much of this. The advantages of trapping for me are it really does not interfere with the landscape. You're not really scaring the hell out of everything. Everything can stay quiet and just keep coming to your traps. And you can utilise a resource. I'm not sure that making pigs a resource is a good thing. It'd be better if we could make them just that everyone hate them and not have some people out there that are making money out of them, because then straight away we're into problems of only taking the big ones and leaving the little ones. Disadvantages, you just can't cover enough area. If you've got 100,000 acres that you want to cover to control the pigs, you just can't have enough traps out there to cover those areas. That's the big one for me. Where in the landscape to position them, you know, low, where there's covered, where there's lots of sign, all pretty straightforward there. And then trap design. Like I said, we could talk about that all day. I'm just going to show you the two best ones that we use, that we've had success with. This is one that a guy that I work with has just finished working on with the invasive animal CRC. That's a 5 acre enclosure. It's not a little pig trap. So the pigs don't feel threatened. They don't feel enclosed. They don't feel like they're even trapped. And it traps goats as well. But if you've got limited water in the landscape and you can put it around that dam, you've got them. They're going to come to water. They don't have a choice. We all know they don't have many sweat glands. The term sweating like a pig, untrue. They need to water and wallow to cool down. So if you can have a trap that large, you can have a real impact with pig trap gates and also this ramp system where they come up and down, which I'll show you. We use training gates. So we have a door that just swings in the breeze. We talked about free feeding for 7 to 10 nights when you bait, same when you trap. It just swings in the breeze. They push in, they push out. They push in, they push out. And then, of course, once you've got them trained, wire that door up and just drop the one-way door. They push in, they can't come out. I reckon that is really important because you need to train them to do that. Some people would say, you don't need to do all that, just have that door shut. Well, those remote cameras have taught us that that's not the case. You know, once one, they very rarely push in after that door's triggered, in my experience. So that training door, that changes that. You've taught them to push. So you get the whole mob, whole sounder. Then, so they're the little doors that we use. And then these ramps. So there's a ramp into the, say the dam's here. There's a ramp into the dam and a ramp out of the dam. So they're trained, they can come in and come out. I've seen piglets this big launch off these things. They're about 3.5 foot high. They just come in and launch off. Then all you need to do is shut that gate. They come in, they can't come out. They don't necessarily jump. That fence is still a reasonable fence and that high, but because it's so large and they don't feel trapped, they don't put a lot of pressure on it. So that's a system that we use in areas where water is confined. I haven't seen that here, especially this morning. Yes.
How much bycatch do you get with that? I know you said that you get goats as well, but is there anything else that you get in there with them? I mean, it should be pretty easy to get it out, but is there anything else that gets in there?
You get a few kangaroos in there, but they can usually get in and out by themselves. Goats, you want to trap the goats. The landholders want to get rid of those. They want to sell them, make money out of them, so they trap that way. But other than that, we don't have things that are going to be trapped in there in our landscape. And that's just, yeah, these pigs just going up the ramps. And it's pretty cool to watch. Just running up and launching off the ramps. Ground shooting, hunting. In short, it doesn't work. We call them pig chasers in Australia for a reason. They chase them, they don't kill them. I used to do it. It's great fun, but there's no impact. We've got to work with people to understand that if they have a shooter or a pig chaser, they're not controlling their pigs. They're potentially adding to the problem because they don't realise how many are still there. You can pressure pigs out of an area, give them to your neighbours, basically, but you can't have much impact on them. You guys have probably seen this slide. I stole this from an American. This is Tennessee, you'd probably know that. I'm going to say I'm in trouble now. When I'm in Australia, I can say anything on this slide. No one knows. You're going to get me now. So I just think this is so powerful of a slide to show the hunting impact. So the following 50 years, there was a no feral pig hunting in Tennessee for over a 50-year period. And it was only, these were the known populations here. And over that 50-year period, those populations grew quite slowly over 50 years to that point. And then in 1999, who's the TWRA?
Tennessee Wildlife Resources.
Beautiful. Introduced a year-round, no-limit hog hunting season. The Bright Sparks in Australia have just done the same thing in some of our state forests and national parks. And then in 10 years, here's the result of the hunters getting rid of those pigs. You've all seen that slide? It's pretty cool, eh? It's really powerful. So hunting doesn't work. Monitoring. So I want to quickly touch on the monitoring. I think monitoring is really, really important because if we want to motivate landholders to act and do things, we need evidence and proof that we're having an impact. It makes it tough because you're putting yourself under pressure and testing everything that you do. But if we want to influence, convince the community, we must monitor. If you've got the money, you can do these aerial surveys to capture the densities. But also, we just use the remote cameras just in terms of having them with their normal infrared view, capturing them when they come past, but then also with your time delay, just so you get a whole lot more. And obviously, if you leave them out for a long enough period of time, you can put it into formulas and work out an index of abundance. And the power of that, for me, is we did that over a 6-month period pretty much for an aerial shoot that happened over a property, over probably 15 properties in Western Queensland. And so then you can give those landholders this data back. So essentially, before the first shoot, we had an index of this amount of pigs per camera, and then we had a 63% drop in abundance from an aerial shoot. That's pretty good. Then we had a little rest period, and we went again, and it dropped it by another 67. So overall, there was an 88% drop in abundance. So that is powerful for the landholders because it lets them see firsthand what the drop is. The scientists in the room can pull that to bits. They can look at that and go, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? Have you thought of this? Nah, and it doesn't matter. Because I'm using that to influence the community to tell a story, which is not a fib. It is actually showing what that index is in a drop over 2 control events, but that really motivates them. And then they want to keep going.
I feel tied like the economics to that too, because that's for a landowner that's doing it. They're like, okay, I see where my value is. But if you were going to go to another landowner, have you tied the economic part to that side too?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. If you know how to do that, we should talk. That'd be really good. I'm not saying you don't know. I mean, I think it can be done, but that would be really powerful. If you can put a dollar figure on each enterprise and show what decrease is, we will motivate them really quick, I believe. So that's a fantastic next step. So now, this is why this picture's here. In smashing these things together, research and community engagement. That's what I believe has to happen. How can we do that? So basically, we've got to get this community-led action and influence them to work together. We've touched on that already. We can't have this attitude where we've fixed the problem and we're done. We're done from a landholder's point of view. And we need the research. We need to collect that data with the community to motivate them to participate. So personally, we don't have land grants in Australia. They don't exist. We have universities that do biophysical research. Then we have, let's call them government staff, who do extension. So the people in the universities are driven and motivated by papers. And they publish papers. It's fantastic stuff. I'm not taking away from it for a second. But there is a gap between that and getting that to the extension people and then getting that to the community. So there's the research world, and they all sit with their little propellers and do their thing, but we've got to get it out there, you know. We can't just put it into these bookshelves. It's got to get out there. So I think the land grant situation just sounds fantastic. I mean, I don't know why we haven't done that, but that just sounds brilliant. And I want to be part of bridging that gap in Australia, bridging the research with the community stuff and the extension, and then hopefully influencing from there. And the way I think we can do that is through this GPS collaring. So I've done GPS collaring just from a research point of view to find out biophysical research answers. But the power of that data when the community sees it is just absolutely brilliant as a motivational tool. So I want to create work where I'm out there doing really good biophysical collaring work, capturing data about where they might be, what they might do, where they're weakest, but then using that to influence the community. So I have ecological hypotheses and human dimension hypotheses crashed together and to basically create management hypotheses or interactive hypotheses. How can I use both of those things to manage? From a biophysical research point of view, I want to look at the habitat analysis and the home range and then use them as Judas animals. There's nothing really new there. You know, in Australia it's not really done from a GPS point of view. It's done from guys spending hours and hours in the field triangulating, getting 1 or 2 fixes a day of where the pigs are. But if I can take a waypoint, a GPS point every half an hour, and then analyse the habitat and work out where those pigs seem to be at their weakest, well then we can target the control a whole lot better. I don't know how many times I've driven around a 1,000-acre sorghum crop, and there'll be 2 or 3 pig traps around the edge. You think a pig's going to go into that trap to eat a pile of grain this big when there's 1,000 acres of sorghum there? You know, that's a crazy place for those pig traps. We need to be much smarter about where we target it. So that's for that home range. For me, that just drills straight back to how many people do we need involved? What's the size of the area that we need to work on? And Judas pig, if we can get that population low, we all probably know how powerful Judas can be at low density pig populations. We only usually get 2 goes. We find the prettiest little sow we can for it and use her, but after 2 or 3 rounds of taking out all of her friends and re-releasing her, she becomes smart to it and realises she's better off without friends. So then we have to take her out and find another. So we only usually get 2 or 3 goes. But from a human dimensions point of view, I can create the ownership with the community. They're involved. They're part of it from the start. They can work out where to target their control and actually change the way they do their management because of it, and it creates an incentive to continue. It's really difficult. By engaging a community to do feral pig control, you can actually disengage them. Because, you know, you'll go in and you'll meet with them, you'll G them all up, let's all get together, let's do all this pig control. And I reckon I can motivate a group of landholders for probably 2 or 3 years to do that. And after about 3 years, they're going, hey, Darren, there's still pigs here, and there's just as many as there was before. We're not going to keep doing this. So look at the damage that's been done there. Next time somebody comes to try to work with them, we've already tried this. This crazy, silly bloke from Australia come and said, you can do this. And we did try, and we worked on it for 3 or 4 years. We didn't get a result. So now the next person that comes in, they're not even starting at ground zero. They're starting down here. So by engaging, we disengage. So we've got to get it right. Yeah, the neighbours, home range, how many neighbours needs to be on board, and the Judas just gives them more motivation to keep going when the populations are so low. This is the map that changed it for me, basically. I'm going to finish up on this. This was just basically a biophysical study looking at where domestic free-range piggeries were, and I collared pigs, which are different colours there, over a 3 to 6 month period to see how the feral pigs interacted with the domestic piggeries. So the answer is they didn't. But so what? That's cool. That's fine. What the power is of this is when I've got these 10 or 12 landholders in the room and I say, hey, why don't we work together to control these pigs? There's no point, Darren. The pigs live in this national park. There's a national park up the top. They live up there. They travel 30 kilometres. They travel 50 kilometres. They eat all my crops and then they go back to the national park. The pigs aren't our problem. It's those bloody national park people. It's not us. But you can see from this collaring study how many times those pigs went to the national park. And so all of a sudden the landholders are going, oh, they're our problem. We're causing this. And that was really powerful to motivate that community to change the way they control. Now the biggest problem with that community is not to get them to control, but to stop this bloke putting a helicopter up every 5 minutes and wait so that everyone can do it. So it's a good problem to have, and they've really had a significant impact on the pigs. So I guess from my point of view, just to rehash that, I want to crash together the biophysical stuff with the human dimension stuff, because for too long I've just focused on the biophysical, and without the people involved, I can't have an impact in Australia. I hope that's helped somewhat. That's just from an Australian point of view. And from our point of view, I think the top 5 things that we could do is increase the ownership and participation. If we can get those people to work together, refine and coordinate the control practices, get them, again, to work together to implement the control properly. Don't leave areas for the hunters. That's just deadly. Understand the ecology, where they're most vulnerable, and improve the monitoring so that you can prove what you're doing. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah?
Alright, so back to the 1080, you said that it doesn't affect the Australian mammals, but what about like birds and reptiles and things like that? Does it have any effect on them?
No.
Okay. Awesome.
No, even less. I think, don't quote me on this, but a goanna has to eat many more times his stomach weight that he can hold in his stomach to even be impacted. Some people may say that 1080 may affect the breeding, the breeding of some of the quolls, but there's been a lot of work to prove that that's not the case, but there's still a belief out there. It comes back to myths. There are so many myths. I don't know how many times I hear, you can't use 1080 because if that pig eats 1080 and then he dies, it's in his bones for the next 5,000 years, and anything that looks at that bone is going to die. You know, that sounds crazy, but that's the stuff you hear. An inch of rain, 1080 is obsolete. It's only really still dangerous if another animal eats the vomitus or the direct stomach content. More of the problem is something else eating the grain before the pig does. So there's not really a problem with secondary poisoning of the carcass. They have to eat that direct. So birds, reptiles and our mammals are all really, really good.
So it's sort of fortuitous that you have this advantage in Australia, that all your mammals are marsupial.
Very.
Of course, we don't have that situation here, so this is a massive problem for us.
Correct.
What is the mode of action of that toxicant? How does it kill the animal?
Sodium nitrite or...
No, the 1080.
I'm not game to answer that question. I'll find that out for you and get back to you about that. I'll get it wrong and I don't want to do that. Yeah.
Well, there's two reasons I'm curious. So one, you said it's a horrible death, and of course that influences public perception and
Correct.
so on. I'm less concerned about that, as opposed to the potential that the populations could evolve a resistance.
Okay, yep.
The mode of action of the
Yep.
toxicant.
So just to comment on those 2 points, there's absolutely no talk of animals becoming resistant. And I'm not sure why. We'd have to know the mode, but there is no talk about that. You don't hear of that. And 1080, a lot of people believe, will be banned in Australia within the next 10 years. So we are facing the same problem as you.
And that's because of public perception.
Totally. 100% public perception.
Yeah.
Yep. Whether that's right or wrong, I guess, is an individual belief. I do know if your dog dies of 1080, it's not cool. It doesn't look good. They go into fits and convulse, and it's really horrible. But there are arguments that animal's out of it by then and they don't know. But there's a whole debate there, a definite debate. But it's a fantastic toxin. Like, you know, it's really effective for the Australian landscape. I should also say for anybody that thinks that they can go and get some sodium nitrite now and put it into some grain or put it into some meat and have any impact, you won't. It won't work. It is that volatile and it's that salty that the pigs just won't eat it. That people can't get... We're having trouble getting a carrier to take it now. So please don't go away from here and try that, because I can tell you it won't work. Yeah. Any other questions? Comments? Darts? I'm good for some darts.
Great presentation. I mean, we have the same problem, trying to get everybody together and working with,
Yeah.
It's the people.
Yeah.
I think in Texas that's a big problem because there's different communities. I say different kind of hats.
Yeah.
You've got the producer hat, you've got the hunter hat, you've got this hat, you've got that hat, and they all don't agree, and so it really makes things challenging when you're trying to reach them with the message of this situation.
I think one of the biggest things that I had to accept was I believed that I was fighting a war against feral pigs and everyone was with me. But I have to accept that there are a lot of people out there that want pigs in the landscape. If they didn't, it would be a whole different situation. We have to accept that people want pigs. And maybe everyone in this room will agree that we don't. I bet you there's a few that don't though. But you know, we have to manage that, and the only way we can do that is with communities. Okay, cheers.